as is what became our tradition, we're continuing every week with Pirke Avot, certainly during this time of the year. And like we said, we're going to do one or two Mishnayot from each of the Prakim, so we can say we at least did one of all six by the time Shavuot comes around. So this week we are going to be beginning the first Mishnah in Perek Dalet. First Mishnah in Perek Dalet. Ben Zoma Omer. Ben Zoma says, Ezehu Chacham Halomed Mikol Adam. Who is the wise person? He who learns from every person, every other person. Shene'emar, Mikol Milamdai Hiskalti, Kiedutucha Sicha Li. Exact translation of how we translate it over here. From all my teachers I have grown wise, for your testimonials are my meditation. I put it out for you guys so we can follow word by word. Okay? Ezehu Gibor, who is the mighty one? Hakovesh et Yitzro, the one who conquers his Yetzer Hara. Okay? Here you go, Yaakov.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah,
There you go.
Thank you.
All right. He who conquers his Yetzer Hara. Shneimar, like it says, Tov erech hapayim migibor u'moshel beruchom miloched ir. Which means that good is the one who is slow to anger, then a gibor, then one who is mighty. U'moshel beruchom miloched ish. And a ruler, moshel beruchom miloched ish, and a ruler he who rules over, so to speak, and takes over a city. Okay? He's greater than that person. Okay? Which means, literally, in this case, the one who actually exercises his ability to fight against the Yetzer Hara, he's greater than one who takes over a city. Okay? Continues the Mishnah, Ezehu Ashir Asameach B'Chelko, right? That's a pretty famous one. He who is rich is the one who is satisfied with his lot. Sheneimar, like it says, Ikia kapecha kitochel ashrecha betov lach. The one who Migia kapecha kitochel, the one who basically strives for that which he needs in order to eat. Ashrecha betov lach, praiseworthy and good is he. Okay. What he translated over here is, if you eat of toil of your hands, fortunate are you, and good is to you. Okay. Ashrecha ba'olam hazeh v'tov lach ba'olam haba. Praiseworthy are you in this world, and good is it for you in olam haba. Let's end off with the last phrase. Ezehu mechubad mechabed et habriot shene'emar ki mechabedai yachabed ubozai yekalu. Who is the one who is honored? It's the one who honors others. Like it says in the pasuk, for those who honor me, I accord honor. Those who scorn me shall be demeaned. Okay. Now, like we were doing up until now, we want to be able to dissect and really go into this Mishnah properly. Okay? So Ben Zoma, interesting, you see in these Mishnayot, they're not called Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Tarfon. They're called Ben Zoma, the next Mishnah is Ben Azai. Right? Very interesting. So they do point out that Ben Zoma, Ben Azai, these were people who were very young in age. Okay, they were very wise, but they were very young at the same time. And as wise as they were, being that they were of such a young age, they did not get the title necessarily of Rabbi. We'll see towards the end of the shiur, interestingly enough, another reason why Ben Zoma is the one to say everything that he said up until now. But we'll save that for later. But it's interesting. The first thing he starts off with is Ezehu Chacham Halomed Mikol Adam. Who is the Chacham? A person who learns from everyone. So Rabbeinu Yonah says something very interesting. He says that there is a fundamental difference between a person who knows a lot of things, who knows a lot of material, okay, to a person who's called a Chacham. Very different. He says, who is a Chacham? A Chacham is a person who yearns to learn. That is a Chacham. Not a person who possesses a lot of knowledge. which seems to be the opposite of what we would think. We would think a chacham is someone who knows a lot. No. He says a chacham is a person who loves to learn. And the definition of a chacham is a lomed mikol adam, a person who learns from other people. Doesn't say he knows a lot, but a person who's willing to learn from other people. What's the advantage to that? A person who's a doctor, right, and doesn't know how to say, I don't know sometimes, is doomed to mess someone's life up one day or another. For that matter, a rabbi who doesn't know how to say, I don't know, will eventually mess someone's life up. You got to be able to humble yourself. And, the definition of humility in this case is putting yourself, it's not necessarily putting yourself down to ask someone else a question, but essentially it shows shiflut, it shows humility, and that's what's going to enable a person to really know a lot. It's the ability to say and to know when he doesn't know something, to say I don't know, and if I need to go do my homework, I'm willing to do my homework. And that essentially is a chacham. Because if a person constantly does that, right, eventually he's going to become that person with a lot of knowledge. Yeah, Victor.
It sounds like the chacham, in this case, the idea that he learned from everyone is that he has an open mind. If you're stubborn and you can't accept somebody's opinion, it means that you will always be whatever you are. If you listen to everybody, it means let's listen, let's open our mind. So what you suggested, it sounds like obviously somebody chacham, but also the personality. As far as just to be,
Right, so I think that's exactly what he's saying. He's saying what defines a person as a chacham is exactly that open-mindedness, to say, I'm going to go open it. I think we're saying the same thing in different words. Yeah.
When I first read it, if I didn't hear your interpretation, or your teaching, I should say,
Rabbi
what
Yonas.
Victor just said, your teaching, what Victor just said, I understood it completely differently.
Oh, let's hear.
And what I understood is, first of all, this is a Torah class, so I'm thinking, Ezu Chacham, one who follows the Torah, one who studies Torah, one learns. So why is he saying, Alomed Mikol Adam? So this is how I kind of explain it to myself as I'm reading it, and the thoughts are floating in my mind. His wisdom derives from his ability to take what he learned in the Torah, he understands in the Torah, and look at the people and either learn from their mistakes or learn from their successes. So not so much as to, could you please teach me how this works, but rather than self-studying and applying of midot and understanding by learning everything around him. This is how I interpreted it as I was reading it.
Right,
so,
right. Okay,
so it's kind of a different direction. I don't know if it makes any sense, but that's how it sunk in my mind.
But ultimately, it's really the same, because there are those who want to say, by the way, like you, that it's talking about specifically Torah. But really, you can really coincide both of them and make perfect sense, and they both really go hand in hand together. Because the whole function of learning is in order to be able to know what to do properly. A person who's learning Torah without knowing how I'm supposed to be acting, right? So you're missing the whole point. It's better that you don't learn, because then you're going to corrupt your ways even more.
Yeah, but I think the emphasis that I had in my understanding wasn't so much about Torah, because Torah is everything. All our life is the Torah, and the Torah is life, and as you taught in your previous lesson, Istakel b'Torah ve'bara et ha'olam. So my emphasis was on the fact that the wisdom of the Chacham is not so much by asking the question, like, can you teach me, I have humility, I am willing to listen to you, but by him being constantly observing and applying whether what he sees as negative to correct himself, and what he sees as positive to thrive, to want to reach.
100%.
That's my understanding. That's the wisdom. The self-teaching is you go about your day and you're constantly observing and absorbing and wanting to better yourself.
100%.
That's my...
We're adding to it by you saying that, 100%. That's the whole point. The point is, I was under the same understanding as you were. Maybe I shouldn't have considered it self-understood, but when a person is going to be trying to give other people the ability to know things, right, and to give a diagnosis for something, we have to assume that the person himself made himself beneficial to be able to give over that diagnosis. So yeah, 100%. It goes without saying, yeah, a person has to be able to work on himself in order for him to be able to help other people. But even if he's working on himself, and he can't say at times, I don't know, so that's a problem, okay? That's a problem, 100%. Maharal says something like this. He says that the definition of chokhmah, the definition of knowledge, is something which is exterior. It's not, you don't possess it necessarily. When you know something, right? Let's say you know a lot about, I don't know, right? Building Lego, right, Adam? I'm kidding, right? You build, I don't know what. You know a lot about medicine, okay? Now, does that mean at the end of the day that I myself become a chacham? You become a chacham when you take that which you learned and you make it a part of you. And that's the whole idea about gaining wisdom in Judaism. Gaining wisdom as something theoretical doesn't change you as a person if it's still very theoretical. But once you take that chokhmah and you make it a part of you, that's what the Maharal says we're talking about over here. Ezehu chacham halomed mikol adam is a person who learns from people in order to internalize it himself, which I think is similar to what you were saying. Okay? Now, this answers a question. Then why are Talmidei Chachamim called Talmidei Chachamim? They should be called Chachamim, a Chacham, right? No, because their entire life they're busy learning from other people. A person of great stature and great, right? A great rabbi ultimately never stops learning, okay? Because once you stop learning, then it's all downhill, okay? So that's the idea. In Judaism, we believe 100% that a person is always a Talmid. There's no question, okay? Which is, by the way, one of the reasons why we say, Moshe kibel Torah miSinai. We say that, Moshe Rabbeinu was the one himself who was mekabel something from Sinai, and he's Moshe. He was the Moshe who he once was, and he still is the Moshe who wanted to learn at the beginning when he was 80 years old, right? And he was standing by the burning bush, right? And he wanted to learn, and he wanted to yearn, and he wanted to get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the same Moshe 40 years later, before he died. He's still a student, so to speak, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's Moshe. He's Moshe. And that's the greatest, because we're talking about the greatest person, who we don't give him a title, because we always say he's still that student. Okay?
I just wanted to comment on the example that you gave about when you learn medicine. You learn medicine, you're the best doctor ever. You're not necessarily chacham, you have a lot of knowledge. You have intelligence and ability to accumulate knowledge. I think chokhmah is more application of things that matter to life, and again, midot and interaction, and also I think one of the other interpretation of the word chokhmah is knowing, a chacham is one who applies his knowledge in the proper way. That becomes a chokhmah. Otherwise, it's just knowledge. It's accumulation of knowledge.
Exactly.
You're like a book.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
all about Talmidei Chachamim.
That's right.
Gemara said Talmid Chacham she'en bo da'at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Just knowledge.
Yeah. It's yeah. Very good. So, a good question over here. If you are considered a chacham, if you're learning Mikol Adam, by the way, we're going to be doing this shiur, Ilui Nishmat, upon request.
Dolat Bat
Torah?
Dolat.
Dolat Bat Serach. Okay? And Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yochai. Yom Kudato. Okay. So an interesting question is, so if you can learn from everybody, can you learn from an evil person?
Yeah.
You could?
Sure.
Doesn't mean that you learn what you've done.
You can learn what not to
You
do.
learn the opposite. You can learn.
Learning is learning by positive or by negative.
Okay. So yes, but no. What's the yes? Yes, you can, but you can never become a talmid of that person.
Yes.
Okay? That's where you have to draw the line.
Right.
There's the famous story that the Gemara speaks about. Rabbi Meir, right, was the greatest Tana, one of the greatest Tanaim in his time. And his Rav, his name was known as Elisha ben Avuya,
Acher.
or according to other interpretations, his name was Acher, right? Now why Acher? other. He veered off, and that's when they called him Acher. He was very, very great, Elisha ben Ahuya. But there was something that happened during his lifetime that completely turned him off from religion. And as great as he was, and as great as Rabbi Meir was, on Shabbat, when Acher would be riding his horse, which is an Isur, Rabbi Meir would walk after him and he would talk to him in learning, because he said, this head is full of knowledge. There's so much to be learned from him. Although he went off the derech, I can still nurse a lot from him. It's unbelievable. So he used to walk after him. So the Gemara asks over there, it says, 1 second, how can he do that? How can he do? He's learning from a Rasha. So they said, Rabbi Meir was the only one who's different than everybody else. Rabbi Meir was able to take the good that was inside and throw away the peel. He knew how to, he knew how to filter the negativity.
But we must teach everybody to be like this.
100%.
It's not.
100%. But
you have to be a Rabbi
Yeah,
Meir
you don't
to be able to do that.
Because otherwise we'll close our mind to everything that outside that is not Torah. It's not
well, you have to understand the level that Rabbi Meir was doing it on was a completely different level than what we learn from other people. Rabbi Meir yearns and is yonek something, and eventually we know that he who you learn from ultimately affects your midot, whether you like it or not. 100%. If you're learning if you're learning for the sake of Torah, and you're learning in order to change your midot, and everything you're applying practically speaking, and you're becoming a different person, which is what the tzaddikim do. That's the whole function of Torah.
Well, but there's another level of learning. You're right. If you only want to learn ethics, let's say, so you only want to go to ethical people. But learning is a wide range of learning. You can learn Gemara and not being religious at all. For example,
100%. We're talking about Rabbi Meir. Yeah, but we're talking about Rabbi Meir over here.
No, generally speaking.
So that's why we said you can learn from an evil person, but you can't become a talmid of that evil person. That's why you have to draw the line. That's very important. Okay, major difference between being a talmid. When you become a talmid, the Gemara says, Masechet Brachot, that Gadol Shimusho Yoter Milimudo. Greater is serving a righteous person than learning from him, the technical aspect of things. Why? Because the whole point of learning is in order to know what the outcome is. Okay? So you have to understand that when we're learning, and we're learning properly, we're not only learning theory, but we're learning traits. We're learning ways of life. We're learning ways of thinking. And when you're learning from such a terrible person, right? And he became a very terrible person. He became a person who was a scoffer. He completely didn't believe in God once he went off the derech. Which we should learn sometime a little bit more about Elisha ben Ahuya. It's fascinating. It's fascinating to know why he became. I heard a beautiful pshat. Maybe I'll share it with you another time. Or if we have time today.
Actually, it's interesting.
What's that?
It's interesting. Why did it? כפר בעיקר, it says, אחד מת, אחד איבד את דעתו, ואחד כפר בעיקר. Only Rabbi Akiva came out.
Yeah.
The way
That's Masechet Chagiga, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to get carried away, but we'll get back to it. I have a beautiful pshat on it I once heard. Okay. Why the double pasuk? Let's look at the pasuk. So, Ezehu chacham alomed mikol adam. Who is the wise person? Him who learns from everybody else. What's the pasuk? Mikol milamdai hiskalti ki edutucha sicha li. Okay, from everyone I learned, ki hiskalticha ki edutucha sicha li. Okay, fine, very good. Let's jump to the next one. Ezehu gibor hakovesh et yitzro. Who is the gibor? Who is the one who is mighty? He who conquers his yetzer. Okay, why? Because it says in the pasuk, Tov erech hapayim migibor moshel berucho milochet ir. Okay, so a couple of questions over here. What does Tov erech hapayim migibor mean? Greater is the one who is slow to anger than a gibor. He's better than, right? Better is one who is slow to anger than a gibor, than a mighty person. Umoshel berucho milochet ir. And a person who rules over his Yetzer Hara is greater than he who basically takes over a city. Okay? First of all, why two examples? Why two definitions in the pasuk? We're talking about who is a gibor, who is someone mighty, a person who conquers the Yetzer Hara. So bring me one definition in the pasuk. Why two? Furthermore, we just said who is a gibor, who is one who is mighty, one who conquers his Yetzer Hara. And then you bring me a pasuk to tell you, oh, but you know who's greater than a gibor? A person who's slow to anger. He's better than a gibor. Right? But you're just telling me, we're in the middle of focusing on who is a gibor, and you're bringing me a proof. And the proof is, oh, but I have someone who's better than a gibor, someone who's better than someone who is mighty. Okay? These are the two questions I want to focus on. So, I saw a beautiful pshat brought by I think it's the Midrash Shmuel. He says, you know, a mighty person doesn't necessarily mean that he's a chacham. And we just finished speaking about who is considered a chacham, right? Halomed mikol adam, a person who learns from everybody else. A person who's a gibor, he's mighty, he's strong, it doesn't mean he's so smart. He could be very talented, he could be very strong, but it doesn't mean he's so smart. The erech hapayim, the guy who is slow to anger, is greater than a person who's a gibor. Why is he greater than a person who's mighty? Because a person who uses his intellect and knows how to deal with situations, because he's a person who's a lot more patient, is going to be a lot more successful in life than a person who's strong, than a person who is than a person who is very cocky, and a person who's very quick to say, because I'm strong, I think a certain way. Some of our presidential candidates are like that, right? But their patience, when it comes to having patience and trying to really dissect a situation and have patience, he is a person who's going to be a lot more successful. That is an erech hapayim. Umoshel berucho miloched ir, it says umoshel berucho, a person who's a ruler, right, who rules over his yetzer hara, he's greater than the loched ir, a person who takes over a country or a city, for that matter. You know, a person who takes over a city, I was thinking about this today, there is no guarantee that the territory that he conquered is going to stay his. There's no guarantee. Because he's right now relying on his army, okay? He's relying on his people in order to secure that which he conquered. And the day that his army decides to turn their back on him, he's finished. I mean, we've seen it recently, right? We've seen it with Mubarak, right? We've seen it with Gaddafi, right? They're very strong, but to a certain degree, they're very strong. The day that they turn their backs on them, they're over, they're finished. But a person who is a moshel berucho, a person who's a ruler over his evil inclination, in a way, he's a lot greater than a person who's conquering a land, because what's he doing? He's taking that which he feels like doing a certain situation, he's taking that, and he's creating and ingraining inside of him this will in order not to sin and not to do things he shouldn't be doing. So essentially, who's greater in terms of ruling? It's the guy who stands back from doing something evil. Why? Because he's in control. It's all in him. It becomes a part of him. It's his decision. Am I going to do this or am I not going to do this? And nobody in the world can stop him, because everything is in the mind. Everything is in the mind. I've read countless stories about survivors of the war, which have told. I even saw Rabbi Lau writes it in his book, Mima Makim. I think it's called Out of the Depths. I know it's called in English. He was writing over there fascinating stories, and one of them was about someone who was being beaten by one of the Nazis, and he told him straight up. He says, "You can kill my body, but you're not going to kill my soul. Go ahead, do whatever you want. You're never going to kill my soul." And every time he would say that, the Nazi beat him even more, because it bothered them. A person who's a real ruler is one who's a real ruler over his own traits. That's a person who's a ruler. Unlike any other person who conquers a country or a city. And it's very interesting. It uses the term moshel. Moshel is a ruler. But you know something? What's the difference between a moshel and a melech? Seem like the same word. So the Gaon Mevilna actually gives an explanation for this. Ki ladonai ha-melucha u'moshel bagoim. To Hashem there is melucha, he's a melech, u'moshel, but a moshel, a ruler, which is a tyrant, bagoim. It's not by us, it's by the others. A moshel, in this context, we can learn it as who is a tyrant, but he's a complete ruler over. And a tyrant is not a good thing. But when it comes to being a tyrant over your own midot, that's a positive thing. A person who's a moshel berucho, he's a ruler, he's a tyrant, but over his yetzer hara, over his evil inclination, milochet be'ir, he's greater than a person who conquers a city. Okay? Now, why do you think it says in the pasuk, Ezehu gibor hakovesh et yitzro? Who is a gibor? The one who conquers his yetzer. It should be, who is a gibor? The one who annihilates his yetzer, the one who smashes his yetzer, the one who takes his yetzer and he burns it, and he doesn't leave any remnants of it. Right? That sounds more like a Torah thing.
Yeah, but there's no such a thing. The yetzer is always there. It's a constant struggle. You constantly have to rule it. It's part of you.
Okay.
Yeah, the yetzer is part of the physical. The kovesh is the mental. You can overcome. You can't prevent yourself from looking out for certain things, but you can bring your mind to
Okay,
overcome.
so they say in the name of the Chafetz Chaim that he said at one point in his life, this was much later in his life, this was the great Chafetz Chaim who dedicated most of his life to Ben Adam L'Chavero, his famous, Sefarim on Ahavat Chesed and Shmirat HaLashon. At one point in his life, much later on, he said, I don't even have a Yetzer Hara to speak ill about someone anymore. And he wasn't saying it in a haughty way, Chas v'shalom. But he trained himself for so many years, tens of years, that if you do that enough, eventually it's not going really to become, it's not going to become a challenge anymore.
Yeah, but that's really one in a billion.
But
why can't we say that over here?
Because everybody.
Hashem wants us to be malachim, no?
Yeah.
No, he doesn't actually.
no, but here is another thing about
Yeah.
the yetzer, which I once learned or heard, is that the reason why we have the yetzer is so we can have those qualities. We just need to channel them. So let's say yetzer creates greed.
Very good.
You covet something, you want it. But instead of wanting money, maybe you would like to want more Torah.
Very good.
Instead, let's say you have competition in you, kinah. Instead of kinat achim, you should have kinat sofrim. So you don't really get rid of the yetzer, but you're moshel.
Exactly.
the
You still have time, very good.
Yeah.
So he's mechaven, you still have times that you're going to be using, for example, your sexual drive, right? If you turned it off completely,
You won't be able
that's
to
exactly
do
what
both
happened in
and
the times of the second Bet HaMikdash, right? The Navi cried out and he said, please, please, right? Was it Ezra or Nehemiah? I think so. He said, please, get rid of this this terrible, terrible drive for Avodah Zarah. And Dosh Baruch Hu took it away. Get rid of this terrible, terrible drive for sexual immorality. Dosh Baruch Hu took it away. Problem is, no one was having children anymore, right? So you have to be able to know how to channel your sexual drive. There's nothing, Chas v'Shalom, there's nothing that's essentially impure, except Avodah Zarah. But anything can be used in a positive light. Anything can be used in a positive light. So that's why he says, Ezehu gibor hakovesh yitzro, a person who conquers the Yetzer Hara. But you still got to leave it there. Like we still need it in order to channel it to the right direction. It's very good. Very good. Okay. The next part is Ezehu Ashir Asamech Bechilko. Who is an Ashir? Who is the rich one? He who is happy with his lot. Like it says, Igia kapecha kitochal, a person who toils, right, in order to work. Ashrecha v'tovlach. Praises he, and good is it for him. Okay? So, there's two pshatim I wanted to share with you in the order of the Mishnah, where it says first Chacham, right? Who is a Chacham, a person who learns from others. Ezehu Gibor, right? Hakovesh et Yitzro. And the last thing is we just mentioned over here, Ezehu Ashir Samech Bechelko. Who is the Ashir? The one who is Samech Bechelko. So, it's in order for us to be able to be a Gibor, okay? and being kovesh our yetzer, what do you have to do first? You first have to be able to learn. You have to be able to learn. So first you learn halomed mikol adam. That's number one. Ezehu gibor hakovesh et yitzro. How are you going to be a gibor? Only by knowing and by learning the loopholes. And the Torah is really, it's the spice for that. The Torah is the remedy for that. The Torah teaches you how to stay away from certain situations. Okay? It does. It teaches you. And once you have those two things, then you can be a person who is Ezehu Ashir Sameach Bechilko. Then you can ultimately do it. Because really, it's very difficult to live a life of Ezehu Ashir Sameach Bechilko if you don't know how to conquer your own Yetzer. Because money is very, very interesting. You know, money is the only thing, if you think about it, that you'll never get sick of. Food, you get tired, you're going to throw up if you eat too much, right? A lust for anything, right? Even a sexual drive. There is a limit to how much the body can take. When it comes to money, it's the only thing where Chachamim say, right? Yesh lo maneh rotze matayin. He who has one.
Also.
And what?
Kavod.
Oh, very good. But what's the definition of money?
physical.
No, but what's the definition of money?
Kavod.
Oh, very good.
Oh.
It's a machloket between the Maharal and the Gaon Mivilna, not our subject. But according to one of them, he says that the function of money is what brings me kavod. Because the more money I have, the more respected I am. Right? And then I can become the President of the United States. Right?
But even the other example that you mentioned that you get sick of, you temporarily get sick of them. All the gashmiut,
True.
you keep going back to them.
True.
You know,
Yeah, 100%. But there's one thing that you'll never get sick of.
Goes on and on.
On and on. There's no pause, and that's money. By the way, speaking about how money is the function of kavod, you know, my Rav Orloek has a pshat in the Gemara. The Gemara says, Masechet Gitin, that a child is enthralled by money. Why does a child love money? I'm telling you, my son, before he knew what a dollar was, even my daughter, she's 3 years old, right? She, it was funny, what did she say the other day? She said, she told my wife, "Oh, mommy, can I have $5? So, 3 years old. So my wife said, "For what?" She goes, "I need to buy myself some toys." You know? I guess she already knows. But yeah, exactly.
Now we know who manages the money.
But even before they know what money is worth, they're enthralled by money. Why? Because ultimately they see what money does.
Yeah.
They walk into a store. A 6-year-old walks into a candy store. What does the owner say? "Get out of here! What do you want?" Keeps an eye on him, looks at the camera constantly, right? I was a kid also, right? But all of a sudden, the child who walks in with $5 or $10 in his hand, the store owner is his best friend. "Oh, what can I do for you?" Right? "Well, you have $10. Oh, let's see what you can buy. We have this, we have that." All of a sudden, he's his friend. You know, we see the place where I've seen this constantly, without failure, is your local makolet in Israel, right? Because every child that walks in there either buys a krembo, buys a chocolate, buys an ice cream after school. Everyone's walking to the makolet, they buy the thing. He's very nervous when he sees kids in there, okay? But if you're walking in there with money, he's a little more relaxed. And what is it? It's this sense of kavod. The child feels, I'm respected. Someone who's 20 times my age is respecting me. Wow, unbelievable, right? That's the function of money, kavod. In any case, it's also another pshat. What's the order of this? I was thinking that, you see, ashirut, wealth, is not dependent on your own free will. HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides before a person is born if he's going to be a rich person, right, or a poor person. Now the same Rambam that says that also says Hashem is going to decide if he's a chacham or a tipesh. But the chacham who we're talking about over here is a different type of chacham. The chacham who we're talking about over here, again, we learned, is a person who's always yearning to learn. It's not a person who has a high IQ. It's a person who's always yearning to learn and to better himself. So that is all dependent on your own free will. Number one, Ezehu chacham elomed mikol adam, who is a wise person, he who learns from others, as dependent on my own free will. If it's the learning and wanting to learn and loving to learn, that's my own free will. And the second is Ezehu gibor hakovesh et yitzro, who is a gibor, he who conquers his yetzer. Again, that's my own free will. That's in my hands. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't decide if I'm going to be able to overcome my yearning to do a sin. Okay, it's all up to me. Hakol min hashamayim chutz miyirat shamayim. Everything is min hashamayim except for the fear of God. Okay, that's all up to us. But the only thing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides is ashirut, is wealth. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides. And that's why we have this order. Now, why this pasuk? If you think about it, it's very interesting. The pasuk that we bring as a proof of who is a rich person, he who is happy with his lot, is a person who toils in order to work. Praiseworthy is he over here. V'tov lach la'olam. What does that to do with anything? We're talking about he who is rich is someone who is happy with his lot. And then you're going into, oh, by the way, a person who toils very hard, Pirke Avot, very nice. What does one thing have to do with another? This is supposed to be a proof of what we just said. Right? Good question?
Well, it just proved the sameach v'chelko portion.
Yes, that's how I read it.
Yeah, when you do yourself something, you achieve, so you have that satisfaction, you're very content with yourself, you're very happy. That answers this part.
Right.
Why? That's a different question.
Right, but it doesn't answer why a person who is...
Right.
Okay.
But
good.
it's only giving an
Yeah.
example of the second part of Sameach V'Chelko.
Mea
What
chuz.
does it mean? Okay.
Mea chuz. So, so it's very interesting.
Yeah.
A person, okay, who's constantly working in order to have his necessities but not his luxuries in life is a person who's ultimately going to be happy with his lot. A person who's always striving for more than what he needs, I think the definition of that would be, I'm not satisfied with my lot. I'm not satisfied with my lot. Unless the kavanah, the intention is different. Where a person says, I'm strictly want to become wealthier in order to help other people. So that changes things around. But a person who's content with his necessities is ultimately showing that what? That he's sameach b'chelko.
But it's not that simple.
But then you
nowadays.
count
What is
it.
a necessity?
I think it's yeah.
Is making sure that you retire comfortably is a necessity or it's a luxury?
Exactly. Where do
No,
you?
that's part of your necessities.
Okay, how much
That's
is
part of your
necessity?
necessities.
How much
So
is
that every
necessity?
person has to be honest with himself.
And if you need care when you're old, is it a necessity or luxury?
No, 100%.
If you live,
There's no limit. It's
one
very-
second.
The
If
question
you
is,
live in Los Angeles,
you're bringing very difficult examples, but a person who perhaps doesn't need to lead a lifestyle that he leads, he knows right now, do I really need this car? Yeah?
Yeah,
And that's the major difference between the necessity and the luxury, because once you have a luxury, for you it becomes a necessity. So that's why it's sometimes very difficult for people who are already at that stage to start determining, well, maybe it's a luxury, maybe it's not a necessity, because usually every luxury that becomes a part of my life becomes a necessity.
Even
See,
that's simple. If you're a lawyer, you're not going with the trunk or Toyota like I do. You need to present yourself. So sometimes presentation is a necessity. So
100%. No, 100%.
But
That's why you have to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
but I think it's very tough too. I think the definition should be, I mean, at least as I understand it,
Yeah.
it should be a little bit different. Because when you try to copy it, and just like Victor said so eloquently, I mean, where do you draw the line? You live in Los Angeles, necessity is one thing. You live in Bat Yam, where I grew up, necessity is one thing. And now necessities is changing for everybody. Necessity is iPhone or necessity is a regular phone. I mean, where do you draw the line? I think the happiness, Ashir Samer B'Chelko, is not for you need to thrive for less. You need to give it your biggest effort to get all the things that you want to get but be happy with the result. I think that's where the happiness is. Accepting the result as this is how it should be, and also knowing how to balance between your life, as you mentioned, your good deeds and everything, and your material life, or if you will, by your spirituality versus your gashmiut.
Yeah.
But to cap it in advance, I think you basically set yourself for dishonesty. Because if I walk out of this shiur and Rabbi Sultan said today, and I'm highly motivated, I'm just lying to myself and to those around me.
No, 100%. But that's why every person knows on his own level what's a necessity and what's a luxury. So if you know, listen, there's a very interesting halacha. There's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch that says that a person who was very wealthy and lost all of his money, so you have a chiyuv to give him tzedakah to the level that he's used to. Why? Because that luxury ended up becoming a necessity, right? There is no cap, which we could say straight up, this is a cap for everyone, because everyone is different. Like you said, there's many situations where a person feels he needs to be able to put money aside for a particular situation. But if you know that I don't need to go on this particular vacation, it's not necessarily a necessity. I know it's a luxury, and you're honest with yourself. So what's he saying? He's saying, Yegia kapecha kitochel, a person who is striving, and you can still have $1 million home. $3 million doesn't mean anything, but you can still have a $2 million home, and be that person, Yegia kapecha kitochel, ashrecha v'tov lach. Because for you, it's something which is a necessity. It's not, I don't think it's a contradiction at the end of the day.
I kind of read it, Yegia kapecha ki tochel, if you're content, if you eat the fruit of your own hard work, and you're satisfied with it, then tov lach, ashrecha v'tov lach. And now we need to move to the second part to understand how it relates to Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. But the way I read it is, again, not capping it, but rather saying, as long as you're happy with your own results, knowing that it's your Yegia kapecha, לא חס וחלילה מתנת אדם, and not חס וחלילה in a way that dishonest, but יגיע כפיך, then אשריך בטוב.
So what does that have to do with Izu Asher Samech B'Chelko?
Hold on, because that's exactly Chelko himself, and he's not kanai of somebody else. That's exactly what Moshe said. That whatever you achieve for yourself with your own hands.
So you want to say whatever you achieve for yourself,
right.
It's your chelek.
Ultimately is your own chelek.
Because we say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides for us, but we make our own ishtadlut. Right. So at the end of the day, if I make my own ishtadlut and ended up with this portion, that portion, and that portion, and I accept that that's chelki because that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu designated for me, then I'm ashir because ani samech b'chelki. I accepted my portion and I'm happy with it.
Okay, good. We'll use that as a pshat. Yeah. So why ashrecha v'tov lach? Praised are you in this world and good is for you in Olam Haba. Because if a person is sameach with his own chilek and he's satisfied with his own chilek, so ashrecha ba'olam hazeh, praised are you in this world because you're going to be able to do a lot more mitzvot in this world. You're not going to be taken by so many other what you're going to feel are responsibilities, you know. And v'tov lach b'olam haba, and ultimately it'll be better for you in the world to come, so to speak, because of those mitzvot.
And I also relate to mitzvah gdola liot b'simcha. Ezehu ashir hasamach b'chelko. If you're happy with what you get and you're samach, then ultimately you're thankful to Hashem. So you're yeh lecha tov ba'olam haba for being thankful to Hashem. You've earned your olam haba.
Right. That's right. Very good. So let's finish the last part. Ezehu mechubad hamechabed et habriot. Who is honored? One who honors et habriot, right? Other people. Ki mechabedai yachabed ubozai yekalu. Which is that I honor those who, right? For those who honor me, I accord honor. Those who scorn me shall be demeaned.
I don't agree with the translation, if you don't mind. The demeaned. I don't know if you took it or somebody else. But I think that in order for it to be worth what the sentence means, mechabdai achabed, whoever give me kavod, bozai yikalu be'enai, whoever despise me, I don't care about it. Yikalu be'enai. For me, there would be like nothing, like kal. Yikalu be'enai. That's, I think, would make more sense. That, right?
I think it's true.
Ki mechabedai achabed ubozai yekalu. Right. And those, right. But why can't it be those who scorn me?
I don't know where it,
No, scorn
No,
me,
scorn
yes,
is fine,
but
yeah.
not demean.
the mean.
In other words,
No, but
I-
ultimately they will be demeaned because of what you're saying. I
No,
think they
in
will-
my eyes, they will
Yeah.
be kal. I don't care about it.
your worth, he's trying to say, kal einaim, al takel dat, al takel einaim,
You can't
you make it worthless. Those
Yeah,
who
but I
respect,
don't-
those who respect me,
I
I
don't
respect,
give it,
and those
mishkal.
who don't, I don't even bother with them.
Uh-huh.
That's yekalu. I don't even bother with them.
Okay.
I don't see them, so to speak. I don't. I
That's
don't.
what I feel. I don't know.
Right. Okay. So we have kinat ta'ava and kavod mutzinat ha'adam min ha'olam. Right. You have the famous Mishnah that jealousy, lust, and
Honor.
honor, right, takes a person out of this world. So those three actually are directly connected to the first three that we were talking about over here. And what are they? So he said, Ezu Chacham, right, the Gibor and the Nashir. So a person who's lomed mikol adam, a person who learns from everybody else, is really the opposite of a person who's seeking kavod. Why? Because, like we said earlier, he humbles himself to learn from other people. Ezu Ashir Sameach Bechelko is the opposite of ta'ava. Right? A person who's Ashir Sameach Bechelko is the opposite of someone who lusts. He's very happy with his lot. Yeah, I'm happy with what you gave me, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the last one is Koveshet Yitzro, is the opposite of Kina. A person who's Koveshet Yitzro and he conquers his Yetzer is the opposite of Kina. Why is it the opposite of Kina? So this one, let's hear if you guys have a pshat in it.
It's the opposite of kina.
Again, the kina is inherent in all of us because that's how we achieve something in life. But if we able to in our mind, in our brain, to control it, it will be good. As Moshe said before, there was a kina for good things for myself, not necessarily that I'm mekane of somebody else, but you stop yourself not to be kina for somebody else to, for what he has, but I want to achieve for myself.
Right, so it can actually also go with Samech Bechelko, that's the truth. Because ultimately a person who's being kovesh his Yetzer, he's saying, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm very happy with my situation, I don't need the Yetzer Hara in order to make me. And the root sin of Kina'ah is ultimately that, it's not being satisfied
Happy with what you have.
Yeah, so it typically goes with both, that's the
Yeah.
truth.
That's
Goes with
Chazak.
both. Stop here. Yeah, okay, we'll stop here. Baruch Adonai Leolam.
Amen ve'amen.
Acher, the pshat about the acher.
So I'll tell you guys a fascinating pshat. Elisha ben Avuya, there's a Gemara in it's a Yerushalmi, I forgot in which Masechet, that says, famous story, that when Avuya, which was Elisha's father, made the Brit Milah for his son, so he invited all the Chachamim over. All the Chachamim. And the Gemara says, you're going to like this Gemara, the Gemara says that all the Chachamim were sitting at a table. And at that table there was a fire going from the table up to Shamayim. That's what the Gemara says. There was a fire going up from the Kiddusha, from the holiness, the sanctity, around all those rabbis sitting around it, there was a fire going up. So, obviously it's difficult to understand what that fire means, right? But what ended up happening was, and let's fast forward. Elisha ben Avuya, he sees all of a sudden this child going on the shoulders of his father, and he's being mekayem two mitzvot, two positive things. One is his father telling him, listen, I need you to go up on my shoulders because there's a mitzvah of shiluach haken, which is sending away the mother bird. There's a mitzvah to do that. You hold the eggs and you send the mother. It's a chok, it's a difficult mitzvah. We don't understand
Well,
it, but
but
it's
he
part
didn't
of the
tell
Torah.
us that he climbed the tree. He fell off the tree and died.
He climbed the tree, right?
Yeah.
He put him on his
Okay,
shoulders.
well,
So
Yeah.
he started.
He's already
He started.
on his shoulder.
No. He's starting the story.
Yeah.
Then he went up and he
So he
died.
goes up, and what happens? The child falls off, and what happens? Breaks his neck and dies on the spot. So he says, this child is doing two mitzvot. Not only is he, what, 2 mitzvot, that the only 2 mitzvot in the Torah, it says that you're going to have a long life. One is Kibud Avayim, and one is Shiluach HaKen.
Yeah.
Both mitzvot. And this is what religion is. No, it's not for me. Right? And he completely goes off. So,
That's the rabbi's
I once, what?
The rabbi's fault to teach us this kind of stuff.
So the question is, I understand if you're someone who's of lesser stature, right? You're not such a big rabbi, maybe a small rabbi, or maybe a regular person. Maybe a person doesn't know that much, that if you see such a situation, it's heartbreaking, it's terrible, it really is. But that it should take you to such a degree that you don't believe in God anymore, and that you totally drop everything. And we're talking about Rabbi Meir's Rebbe. We can't even fathom his greatness. So what happened over there? What was it? So I once heard a beautiful pshat from a great person. And he said, based on the Gemara that I mentioned earlier, the Gemara says that by that party, that the Brit Milah of his son, Elisha, the rabbis were sitting around the table, and all of a sudden there was a fire going from the table up to Shamayim. And what does it say that Avuya did? He came and he told the rabbis, I want my son to be able to do things like that. That's exactly what I want. And therefore he invested. And he invested time and he invested money in getting all these rabbis to learn, because he was a very wealthy man. He invested all of his time and money in order to get these rabbis to teach his son Torah. But what was the goal? So that he can do tricks like these. That was the goal. So if you're educating your child your entire life, that the reason why the outcome of you becoming so great is going to be A, B, C, and D. You're going to be able to create fires, so to speak, right? The moral of it.
You missed the point.
You missed the point completely.
You missed the whole
And
point.
therefore, when we get to a situation where you see something so terrible, and the Torah says you're going to have a long life if you do this mitzvah and that mitzvah, and a child dies right then and there in front of you, then everything in your mind is supposed to make sense. 1 plus 1 is supposed to equal 2. And if it doesn't equal that way, well, that's the way I was brought up. I can learn Torah, and if I learn Torah, I'm able to create fires. I'm going to be able to do tremendous things. I'm going to be able to do tricks. But that's not what the goal of Torah is, because at the end of the day, there are many things that we don't understand.
To take the pshat, how come we say that Ben Avoya was very smart, very clever, and it has to get to that point in order to give it up or to not understand? The Torah is full of examples. Tzaddik ve'alo, rasha ve'tov. What if he's that smart, he knew it before.
May I try to answer it?
Sure.
Your question addresses the intellect. You're saying, how come he's so smart? How come his intellect didn't tell him? But he didn't fail with the intellect. He failed with the yetzer, with the gava, with this is who I am. He failed with the yetzer, not with the intellect.
What's the gava to do with that not understanding?
Because his father, no, it's not understanding. It's not accepting.
No, I'm taking the pshat, not understanding.
Yeah, that pshat.
So that's the thing.
Yeah.
He's saying very good. One thing is intellectually learning about tzaddik v'ra'u rasha v'tovlo. But at what point do people give up hope? Only when it emotionally hits them.
Yeah.
That's when they give up hope. People didn't give up hope before the Shoah, right?
Yeah,
the people gave up hope,
no,
right? After they went through what they went through.
It's nothing to do with hope. He gave up religion, belief. He believed that he's doing something, getting something in return.
What do you think religion is? For most people, religion is
for
a
most
sense
people,
of
but
hope.
that's why I'm saying the rabbis don't teach it properly. What we get in return is way more than the actual return.
Victor, I don't know which rabbis you're going to. You got to come here every Wednesday night.
Now you're talking.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
I'm talking about rabbis when we were 5 years old.
I hope we didn't